This presentation is about to cover how we would conduct an OCM strategy for a project, whether it's a major project or a minor project. What I hope to walk through here is the entire method or OCM method that can be used successfully to launch a project and to keep that project or that the change process in that project flowing. Pretty much for our OCM change project, we definitely do need to have a plan in place in order to implement that project. What I'm going to go through is the objective here for completing that plan. Our objective in this session here basically is to outline the change process for a project. Also, we want to understand the hype cycle in a project. And we also want to understand the importance of communication during a project. Also identify effective tools to use during an OCM process and recognize risk and how to manage those risks. One of the key things that I believe I gathered from this particular course is the overview of an OCM process. That overview is what we're looking at here, and it's divided into 4 stages: a stage of awareness, a stage of understanding, a stage for implementation, and then a stage for readiness. Excuse me. The process is defined here in a table format, and another way of displaying this process is in this manner, a chart that kind of breaks out individually as well what each stage, what is done in each stage, and how each stage is pretty much defined as one develop an OCM project. The awareness stage is the first that we will discuss, and then we'll talk about understanding and readiness and post-implementation. Key thing that you want to note here as you look at this particular chart is that there's a lot of information that is being collected at each stage, because at each stage of your process you want to be able to have an idea of where you are as far as in relation to where you're going. So it helps to have that kind of an information collection taking place at different stages. The information may differ that you will need, but you have to continuously do that. You also want to continuously be looking at your OCM strategy that you have in place. As you progress forward, you may have to make some changes to that. You may have to adjust it as you go forward. So that's kind of key what I picked up from this chart, the 4 stages and what needs to be taking place during those 4 stages. Awareness. At that point in your development of your OCM project, you really don't know all the details as yet. However, you want to make certain that you keep in accordance with the vision and mission, overall vision and mission of the organization. And you also want to have a definite vision for the project as to where you want to see it going. Develop a clear vision, develop a clear mission statement so that you can anyone can easily understand what the project is about, where the project is headed. You also want to consider your stakeholder assessment. That is very important. Stakeholder assessment basically is an assessment of all those individuals involved or who will be impacted by the project. You want to know where they are, how do they adjust to change, etc. So that's very key to have that kind of information when you're doing your awareness. If you have an organization, for instance, that's going through a lot of changes, you do want to be able to understand whether or not the organization can sustain another change at this point. Sponsorship is important. You want to have someone in the organization that is visible, vocal, etc., sponsoring the idea or the initiative. With the sponsor behind you, pretty much can get support from other parts of the organization. And executive presence is also important because you want to make certain that leadership is involved from the ground running. You want to have your leadership involved in the process of going through changes. At this point, key, communicate. And you will see this mentioned more and more as we go along. Communicate what is happening, why it's happening, when it's going to happen. And you have to develop your OCM strategy right at this point of awareness that you're going through. There's one key thing that I gathered as well from the course, and that is the hype cycle. Studies done by Gartner that indicates where technology is in as far as the hype is concerned around it. Understanding the hype cycle helps you to determine whether or not technology should be adopted by your business or your organization. This is an example of Gartner's chart here that reflects what the hype cycle is. As you can notice, there's a peak and then there's usually a sharp drop. Then it rises again and levels out. Most organization picks up on technology or begins to implement the technology when it's on that adoption curve. That's when you find most people coming on board. Most of the kinks have been worked out, bugs have been worked out, they're hearing good things about it, and so they get on board. The key to this is not to invest in technologies just because there's a hype. You don't want to jump on board just because everybody is on board. However, you also do not want to ignore it because it may fail to live up to some of the expectations. What is most important is you have to determine the needs of your organization and utilize and make your decision based on those needs. That's the hype cycle. Some tools around awareness is pretty much that you would have to, with awareness, you pretty much would have to understand a roadmap, an OCM roadmap. You do have to have an OCM roadmap. Build a template for your OCM plan. What I have found to work, I've tried it very briefly, but I think it's a great tool, is the mind mapping application. You can download a 30-day trial period for that application. I think it's a great application. Develop change impact spreadsheets. Have those so that you can pretty much determine what changes are going to be performed. Look at those, see how they will impact different parts of the organization. A stakeholders resistance and OCM risk analysis process you want to have in place. You want to have the proper tools to take care of that as well. This is very key. I will touch on that later on. As well as your communication plan. You do want to have a strong, good communication plan from the beginning. No matter what stage of the project you're in, communication is very key. So you do want to have to make sure that you have a good communication plan in place. Alright, understanding is the next stage. At this stage, we pretty much know in general how things will work. We've looked at it, we've examined our change initiative, and we know in general how it will work. Here again, your vision statement is very important. Communicate that clearly. By now you will have had a good, definite vision statement, knowing exactly where you're going. Communication at this point. You know what the project is about. You know where you're going. You know where you're headed, etc., etc. Clear, copious amounts of communication is very important. The more you get the message out, the more it's before people, the more they understand what's going on, the smoother a change you can execute. You must be able to communicate that through email, through posters, word of mouth, face-to-face meetings, Whatever it takes to get the message out is very important. There's no one way of communicating a message to individuals. Some people will check emails, some wouldn't. So you do want to make sure that you're looking at all means of getting the message out. And you also want to celebrate major breakthrough when you're at this stage of your process as well. Something has happened, you've come to a major milestone, everything is in place, it's successful. You want to demonstrate that, you want to display that, celebrate it. Communicate what you know at this point. Get understanding from your stakeholders, know what is their perception of the entire project, talk with them, get their input, understand where you are at this point.